So, Bradley Scanes, I'm very happy to have you here with me today, a physiotherapist and performance coach who's worked with elite athletes across the board, many different sports, including Team GB, perhaps most notably, though, as Max Verstappen's personal conditioning and performance coach for 4 years, and a key part, you'd say, of that inner circle for 3 consecutive Formula One World Championship titles. What I find fascinating about this, Bradley, is that you had never watched a Formula One race before you worked with Max.
I had not. And firstly, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed following the story of this podcast and the new products so far as well. So thank you. But I had no interest in motorsports. Had never watched an F1 race or knew anything about cars.
How does that happen? So we talk about you being involved in multiple sports.
Yes.
And we're going to really deep dive into the performance habits of world champions and what you've learned from them and what other people can learn from them too, because you've worked in those multiple disciplines. But how does somebody who is a performance coach, and you can apply that to multiple sports, end up in what is a very technical sport with, I should imagine, quite specialist needs? How do you go from doing everything to doing that for what turns out to be a world champion?
Yeah, I think you can apply that, as you say, to any sports. I was in gymnastics before that. I was in basketball before that, soccer before that, boxing, UFC. And although, each sport has their intricacies in terms of what the physical demands are, what the mental demands are, you can still apply performance aspects to that. So as soon as you deep dive into the sport and figure out those physical demands, those mental demands, you can then start to train for them or rehab an injury to them or start working on the mental performance of them. And also, I've been very lucky to work with a number of world champions as well. So you start to see the different traits across the three.
I want to know what they are. So what sets apart like everybody else in the paddock to the world champion drivers? I mean, what is the difference between those two groups of people?
Yeah, I think we can look at this two ways, because you've got drivers and motorsports as a one thing, but also then just kind of world champions and how they, perform at the highest level. And for me, I think the key traits I see from the world champion athletes I work with as 3 things. One is they perform in the chaos. So no matter what is happening, they'll perform in the same way. So Max Verstappen is walking down the pit lane. He's being interviewed by Sky Sports at the same time. It's chucking it down with rain. He puts his helmet on, gets in the car, drives exactly the same and delivers exactly the same. Max Whitlock, 30 seconds before going out to secure the gold medal, changes his complete routine because his difficulty of routine isn't good enough to win the gold medal. 30 seconds before he goes out. Delivers on execution, wins the gold medal. Lucy Charles-Barclay tears her calf 1 mile into winning Kona World Championship Ironman, finishes the race even though she's being chased down, and wins the World Championship after coming second 5 times in a row. So they just got that mentality just to shut the noise out. And that leads nicely into the second thing is being present. Being present in the moment, not letting past experiences influence the current time, and not letting like future thoughts influence the current time as well. Michael Jordan always said it the best in that he used to say, why would I worry about a shot I haven't even taken yet? So not letting anything kind of influence within
and
that.
Being able, I guess, to also park the bad stuff. So if something does go pear-shaped, you can park it. Like I always think that with tennis players, you're watching tennis players and each point matters, obviously. Yeah. But they sort of, if you go, I don't know, 40-15 against or something, and how much do you not let that get in your head that next point is a game point, and you've got to just try and park it. Yeah.
Roger Federer said that, didn't he? In terms of it was always think about it for a second, and then it was back to 0-0 and deliver the same point. So you've got performing in the chaos, being present, and then just that flexibility and adaptability to just take any pressure and just change anything that you need to within the moment.
And are they just born like that, or are they created like that? And what can shape and change that as different things happen in their world, different experiences, shape the person?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I think we don't know the answer, honestly. I think there probably is a degree of some genetic factor there. I think early life plays a huge part. There was a piece of research not so long ago that showed that the majority of the greatest athletes that we've experienced, you know, our Michael Jordans, our LeBrons, our Maxes, our Lewises, all of those had some sort of adversity to overcome in early life. And, you know, we're sitting here talking about resilience under pressure and being able to perform in the chaos, and that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And then I think as they grow older and they work through their sport, just the hours and the work rate they put into learning their craft and becoming automatic. And the more automatic you are in your craft, the more you can, you know, execute at the highest level, the more capacity you've got for the other stuff. You know, Max knows the Brazil track like the back of his hand. He'll be driving it on the simulator even in the lead up to the race last year, because he wants to be the best.
He's driven it multiple
times. Because if it then chucks it down with rain, he doesn't have to think about driving the track. He can then start to think, okay, where's the driest spots? Where's my wet racing line? What decision am I going to make when I need to overtake, coming from P17, P18, whatever he was in that race. And I think you saw one of the greatest drives that we've ever seen last year when he ultimately won the World Championship that day.
I was watching that drive that recent Drive to Survive, and I just completely enthralled by the battle that was ensuing between him and Lando. That took him from 17th or whatever it was right the way up to the top of the grid, and it was just the tenacity, the temerity, the kind of the balls out behaviour, which was like, I'm going to stay out even though it was wet as hell and everyone else was boxing, and it was like, what is he going to do? And it's so, is that something that you, like you say, is that just because he's put so much into the preparation that he trusts himself inherently with the decisions he's making? Because you've got people in your ears as well telling you what you might or should think maybe or should do.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you balance all that up? How do you kind of train someone to manage that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Again, Max is a talent that we won't see many times come through. But I always remember listening to him tell a story about, you know, when he was younger and his dad used to send him out in his cart and he would change like one thing on the cart, one small thing on the cart, and he'd give Max 2 laps to come back in and then tell him what had changed. And this is like when Max like 4,
so he hadn't
5,
told
6.
him what it was.
Yeah,
it was
exactly. And you know, I've never heard I've heard a few drivers in the car now. I've never heard anybody give feedback like Max does. You know, you change the smallest bolt, he'll come back in and say, "What have you changed?" Really? Or he'll tell you what you've changed.
Everyone says with him the setup of the car is very difficult to drive for almost anybody else. Is that a thing, or is that just?
Yeah, I think.
Or is he just better?
Max can drive around anything, so I would wonder if the kind of setup of the car probably isn't good for anybody. You know, he kind of has a default setting that they can set the car to that suits his style of driving, and you know, he can be losing the rear of the car around the corner, but because he has just got such a feel with the car, you know, he can save it, work his way out of it, whereas nobody else probably can.
Okay. The other thing that you sort of would, I guess, have real insight to, and drivers must have, you know, real resilience to deal with this, but they turn up at the track and there's a ton of stuff to do. Yeah. There's a ton of media to do. There's a ton of sponsor activations. There's all sorts of stuff they got to do before they even sit in the car and go for practice day or practice laps and then quali and then race day. So as someone sitting behind him and coaching and advising that person as to how to best manage their day, I mean, what do you do in those moments to basically shut out as much noise as possible, but deliver what you need to deliver to manage all those expectations around them?
Yeah, I normally end up in arguments with the marketing department. I'm never there.
Trying to strip stuff out, right?
Yeah, exactly, because they just load it up way too much. And what you have to remember is when we're talking about like athlete performance, load is everything. So when we're like looking at load management for a particular athlete, you're looking at their training load, you're looking at the physical demands of being in the car, the mental demands of being in the car, how you're going to fuel for that, all their hydration. So they're the kind of like well-known physical attributes that we are always looking after. But if an athlete or a driver is having to do 10 interviews on a Thursday, 2 meet and greets, a sign-in session, press conference, go and do a meet and greet at a dinner in the evening afterwards. It's going to then lead into his night, his rest. And then they do that on the Saturday as well before the race, and they have to go to a dinner and a meet and greet. That's load as well. That's going to tire him out. It's going to fatigue him out. And, you know, it's a big cognitive factor to driving a car as well, right? They're driving around at 300 kph and they're pressing 26 buttons on the steering wheel whilst talking to their engineer, whilst making high pressure decisions, probably in 50 degrees of heat under G-force. Like, if you're fatiguing them mentally as well by doing all of that, you're then going to impact their performance. And we used to see it a lot in the big races like Miami and Austin, where it was just such a presence wanted from these drivers because it was making money at the end of the day, and it was all about, you know, appeasing the sponsors.
And there's a certain amount that you can obviously say, please shut out the noise for him. He doesn't need any of this stuff. Or, you know, it's definitely not helpful. But ultimately, some of it will happen. So when that does happen, what are you sort of saying to him? What are you advising him to do that's going to just take a lot of that away? Because he's got to do it. So how do you manage around the edges of that to make sure he's as well prepped, conditioned and physically prepped as he can be? Yeah,
so obviously coming into an event, we would have always planned our training and our preparation sort of well. So, you know, pre-season is the best time to get your physical fitness done. Physical fitness underpins your mental capacity and your mental fitness as well. So you need to make sure you're reaching your kind of fitness targets by the end of pre-season. And F1's always an interesting sport or motorsports in general, because there's a certain level of fitness you can get to. By going above that level of fitness, it won't gain you lap time. You're not going to get quicker. But if you drop below that level of fitness, you know, your cognitive function.
So there's like a sweet spot.
Yeah. Max knew it very well, because once we hit that, he didn't want to go any further. but yeah, you know, other drivers will, you know.
I guess that's also like having the kind of the sensibilities to sort of know what's going to get you the best gains.
Yeah,
and then not going, like you say, to a place where it's not where it's not affecting any difference anyway.
Yeah, very good self-awareness. But also, so the fitter you then get, so you add a little bit on there, because then that helps you deal with things like jet lag, helps you deal with, you know, having to do days where you're cognitively stressed, mentally stressed rather than physically stressed. So that helps. And then leading into the event, again, it depends where we are, because we could be anywhere in the world. And then Thursday is that kind of full media and marketing day. So we're planning sleep schedules, jet lag planning, we're fueling right, we're hydrating right, we're preloading all the good stuff from, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Monday, depending on where we're going. Sometimes we're having to fly in early for other marketing events, you know, whole day things of driving or whatever. So it might push us back, you know. Coming into Las Vegas, I think we ended up going like the Saturday or Sunday before, because we had a big time zone shift. We had to do like 2 or 3 events on multiple days, even before we even got to the race. So it's just, making sure we work back from the race and try to ensure we're getting into the best condition possible come race day.
And is there, going back to this performance of world champions, but is there sort of what happens when they become a world champion? Like, does that change? So if you're working with someone like Max Whitlock or Max Verstappen, do you see a change in them when they become a world champion? Is there a difference between training someone to be one and then once they are?
Yeah, I think so. The hunter becomes the hunted, right? In the very best, you actually see them relax. They've achieved their goal, and a lot of pressure's off them, because often if they're good, there's pressure on to win a world championship. You know, there's an expectation that they're going to win a world championship. I think that weighs heavier in a lot of athletes. And then obviously when you get to the top, everyone's then chasing you, so you have that pressure, and that's where you kind of, you know, your resilience under pressure kind of skills come into play. But for the 2 Maxes, for Lucy, like once they got there, they relaxed and they grew into the role. You know, they worked harder to become even better. They wanted to annihilate the opposition and just show people how good they were. And I think having won a world championship, that gave them the opportunity to do so, because the pressure was off, essentially.
Do they also go into competition with themselves?
Yeah.
Is that what also happens? Because you can see that you'd want to beat the rest of the field to get there, but then once you're there, is it about beating yourself?
There's competition with yourself, and there's also just kind of reframing goals. So
that's interesting.
One of our, I won't go too much into our goals, but like we would, with Max and Red Bull and stuff, we would talk about kind of what he would want to achieve as a goal, say in 2023 when we had a very good car. And we might say at the start of the year or a couple of races in, we want to win by X number of seconds, or this is a race where we can lap so-and-so, or at that point we wanted to win every race as well. Red Bull thought they could win every race. We thought we could win every race. And you saw the disappointment in the entire team in Singapore, where we didn't win Singapore. It was the only race we didn't win that year. And that season was, everyone was dominant, from the guys on the pit stop to the catering staff to Max. Like, everyone was dominant in their role, and we were just on automatic. So
what are your biggest takeaways when you're in a team like that, where everyone is absolutely top of their A game and everyone's performing out their skins? When you step back from that, and you're part of that, when you step back from that, what do you take away? What are your key learnings that actually other people, if they could see the insights of that, if they could get onto that, be a fly on the wall watching that unfold, what do you think the key takeaways are for somebody who's looking into that world and saying, God, that's a good learning?
Yeah, I think processes. Everyone knew their identity, they knew their scope, and they knew what they needed to deliver on, and then they delivered on that in an elite level. We'd actually been a team for 2 years then as well. There wasn't too many changes. So again, knowing how like one another works, or even just when one another needs space, or arm around the shoulder, or something like that. And I think that's a big part of my role in that year, was just to keep it going with everybody. As a performance coach in F1, you're a bit of kind of the link between the whole team and the driver as well. So you just keep everybody happy, and make sure you speak to everybody and get everyone kind of vibing on the same level. But yeah, I think it was more of a systems approach. Everybody knew their jobs, everybody knew their roles. That age-old Navy SEALs quote, isn't it? You don't rise to the level of expectation, but you fall to the level of your training, and everybody was the best at what they were doing there and then. And nobody wanted to be the guy that messed up either.
See, there you go. It's about having that. It's about that camaraderie driving forward and not wanting to let anyone down. Right?
Yeah, and the level of expectation. Yeah. It's okay to keep raising your expectations each time. If we want to roll out and say, let's go for winning every race of the season, that's okay. It's not an arrogant position. It's a self-awareness of, we know what we can do to achieve this. And then we tried to do it.
Yeah, it must have been amazing to be part of. Thank you so much, Bradley. That's brilliant.
Yeah, no worries.